Welcome to the North Witch Podcast with your hosts Azariel Flame and Sandra Von Holland. In this podcast, we explore all the things that can help us to be better and improve our lives in body, mind, and spirit. Looking at everything from witchcraft, sorcery, woo-woo, spirituality, biohacking, the mundane, and everything in between. We occasionally have on guests from various backgrounds, practices, and philosophies. We welcome everyone from all walks of life, from the left-hand path to the right-hand path, from the medical to the holistic, from the woo-woo to the scientific, and everything in between. We have conversations and discussions about our experiences over the years, what works for us, what hasn't worked, and explore new theories and science, trying them out, seeing what works, and debunking what doesn't. Thank you for joining us on this wicked adventure along the crooked path as we adventure into the mysterious and wonderful world and welcome what truly works for us to become better witches, sorcerers, magicians, and our best selves so that we can live our best lives. May these conversations help you to ignite the light within. The views expressed by our guests on this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of us here at Northwich Magic Co. All of the information shared on this podcast is anecdotal and shared for entertainment purposes only, and does not constitute medical or financial advice. Always consult a doctor, physician, or professional in their field before trying any of the things that may be discussed on this channel. Magic and holistic healing should work alongside allopathic care when necessary. Okay, welcome back to another exciting episode of the North Witch Podcast, and we have Sara Mastros back on with us again today. Sara is the author of the Orphic Hymns Grimoire and the Big Book of Magical Incense, and she has her own business running through witchlessons.com. So how's it going today, Sara?
Very well. How are you guys?
We're doing really good, actually.
Great.
The world is changing crazy fast over here now, and we got a new trajectory going on, and so we're kind of nervous-sighted moving into the near future here. So it's going to
be. That's a good word. I like that.
Yeah,
I agree.
So you've been obviously very busy because you were just showing me all of your lovely incantation bowls there. So what's the story going on with them? What do they do? And they look really cool.
All right, so let me show an example first. So this is the way I make them, right? So they're modeled on a kind of like amulet for the home from mostly Iran, Iraq, and Syria from like the 6th to maybe 9th century CE. They're usually called Babylonian Incantation bowls or Babylonian demon bowls. One of the things I really like about them is because they are an artifact, like a physical artifact, we find them like in situ. So we can learn a lot about like where we find them. So we find them like buried at the doorway of a house or sometimes the corners, but we also have sociological data because they're written on them, and the formulas on them usually include the name of the magician and the name of the client who sponsored them. And so like that gives us a lot of information about like who made them and why. And so they're almost, the ones that we find are almost always for like home protection from like demons and malicious spells and whatnots, right? But I think we do find them for other purposes. So every once in a while you'll find one that's like clearly a love spell, or find one that is like, there's a cool one for like business success. I actually think that, you know, the fact that we think they're always about home protection, I think might be about like, because those are the ones that get like buried like under the threshold of a house. I actually think it's partly that we're more likely to find those, because I think as a magician, if I was making them for some other, like if I was making one that was a love spell, I would probably break it after it worked. Do you know what I mean? Like I wouldn't necessarily bury it under my house for that kind of magic. So I think the fact that they're really skewed toward protection might partly be just like a bias in where they survive. It's for us to find them. But I do think, you know, because the text on them normally like spirals in, and then in the middle, there's often like a picture of a demon bound in chains. I really think, like, to me, that spiral and the fact that they're like bowl shaped kind of indicates that it's like a trap. Do you know what I mean? That the spirit gets in and can't get back out. So that's what I think. That's how I think of them, is as traps. And they're almost always written in like the vernacular of the person who made them, which in the case of these bowls is often Aramaic. And then they usually include the old, this like magical technique definitely started in the Jewish community, right? So the earliest ones we find are sort of like very Jewish, right? Like the god names are all Hebrew, and the name of both the magician and the client is Jewish. But these are occurring in like a very multicultural environment. So real quickly, we start to find Jews selling them to not Jews, right? So the magician's name is Jewish, but the client's name is, and you can't always tell, right? But like, if the client is named like Ishtar, we can probably imagine that person's not Jewish. Just like when I meet somebody named like Christopher, I think to myself, probably not a Jew, right? Right? Because I mean, but I do know Jews named Chris. So it's not like a foolproof system, right? But you can, because they have these names on them, you can really watch the cultural diffusion. And then over time, they start to get made by everybody. And they start to include even the ones that are clearly made by not just Jews, but Jews with like a high level of like Jewish education. Like they're Hebrew, which is not their vernacular language, right? Like their everyday language is Aramaic, not Hebrew. But like they're clearly very like highly educated in Hebrew, some of them, right? And there's a big, this area is like the center of Jewish learning at the time. Like the big Jewish universities are all there. So a lot of these people are probably, the magicians are probably the graduates from there, but they are still making bowls that are, in addition to Hebrew god names, like also full of pagan god names, which is a thing I always like. So I know I'm like such a nerd, but I just think these bowls are so cool. And, I've made them before, but for whatever reason in the last, partly, I've only ever made them like custom for a client. Like a client comes to me looking for like a particular kind of like curse breaking or protection. And sometimes this is what I would do. But I've started to make them sort of like off the rack. And we know that that's one of the things that like the originators of this, I'm just going to call it like a magical technology. We know they were doing it because in some cities, like Nippur is a particular like city that's been excavated. There were like maybe a dozen of these bowls that were obviously identical. Like they were clearly made by the same, like the wording is exactly the same. And they clearly like left a blank where the person's name goes because the name is filled in like a different handwriting and like doesn't really fit in the space that they shoved it into. And so to me, that's clearly that like one afternoon, they just made like 30 of these and then slap people's names. And then this is cool. Sometimes we find them, they're not written at all, right? They just have like, you know how if you like wanted to make some fake writing, you would just kind of like draw some squiggles. That's what it is. It's called pseudo script. And like, it's not actual writing. And people posit that like these were made by illiterate magicians to sell to other illiterate people. Like, and they were just,
that's interesting.
I don't want to say they're fraudulent because like you could definitely you could do the same magic without the writing. So I don't want to say exactly that those bowls are fraudulent, but they're like, I think the person who bought them thought it had magic words on it, but actually it had little squiggles on it, I guess is what I will say. Right? But that's also cool. So I've been experimenting also with some like less written ones. So right, so I've been like playing around with some other like things. I don't know. I really can't explain why, but they're just super fun to make. So I've been making them on these like terracotta saucers. And if people want to make them themselves, like these Sharpie oil pens, having experimented now with a variety of kinds of ink, these are, I think, the best for them. And the ancient ones are like not, the materials are not fancy. They're like the exact same kind of bowl that they used to eat out of. And it's just like the regular ink that they wrote everything with. Like it's not they're not made out of anything fancy. Like the magic is in the words. And that's just I like that. Like that's maybe I'm into word magic, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Now, do you think that like I saw that you just did one with a spiral, like I've seen numerous different exorcism traps or spirit traps or whatever done with a spiral pattern. So do you think that it would be able to be, you know, like if somebody, again, going with what you said, couldn't speak the language, you know, like say they aren't able to read or write Hebrew or whatever.
Although again, these are made in their just like I'm doing them in English, they're doing them, they look like they're in Hebrew because their everyday language is Aramaic, which uses the same alphabet, but they're like not in a sacred language. It's just their regular everyday language.
So like you could probably transfer it to like a sigilized language or turn it into like even use a Latinized alphabet if you knew the technology you were doing.
I mean, right? Again, I do them in English. Like I do English on the inside, like the actual petition. And then I've been putting like Hebrew, you know, the historical ones are usually empty on the outside, but because I'm using saucers, I just have this like flat space that it feels like it's just like wants me to put something there. So I've been putting things there.
Awesome.
Yeah, you could, here's the thing, you could make them all kinds of ways. At a certain point, I think you have to like you're not really making a Babylonian style incantation bowl anymore. You're making like
yeah, for sure,
an amulet shaped like a bowl, but I don't feel any like, I'm not a big believer in like either like orthodoxy or like historical reconstruction in my magic. Like, you know what? I've been using these metallic Sharpie pens on some of them. And if you're trying to tell me that 8th century magician wouldn't have used a silver pen, like if he had a silver pen, he definitely would have used it because it's cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or like laser engraving Solomonic pinnacles. We maybe even talked about this last time. I'm not sure. Like there's actually a whole story in Talmud where Solomon goes on a quest to find like a magical engraving tool made out of light. So if you're telling me that he wouldn't use a laser cutter if he had one, like he definitely would. Or like if Solomon would never like mix pagan gods into his magic. Like, I don't know what you're talking about because the Talmud, the rabbis complain about him doing that constantly. Right. So like, I don't really understand the motivation for orthodoxy and magic. To me, it just seems like perhaps contrary to the spirit of sorcery, which I think of as like a pretty non-orthodox activity to be engaged in. So yeah, you can definitely make them in sigils. I've been experimenting a lot with like secret alphabets, right? Like what Austin Spare would call like an alphabet of desire. Yep, I guess sure. I think is what he calls it. So I've been playing with that a lot. You could definitely make them in that. You could definitely make them fully like non-written, right? But of course, again, at a certain point, are you still making like it clearly was inspired by that because that's what inspired you. But at a certain point, is it still that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, yeah, from my point of view, like sort of the core features of particularly Babylonian incantation bowls are that it does have this like incantation text on it, right? That the primary like magic to it is the text. And there's a lot of text, but they all basically go like I, and then like the magician, and then they will like assert where their magical power comes from, right? So like, I, Sara Mastros, clad in the mantle of Solomon, magician king, or I, Sara Mastros, daughter of the house of Jacob, or like I, Sara Mastros, initiate of the order of the Caduceus, or like whatever it is you're gonna assert, right? And then you basically say like, I am writing this bowl to, and then you put some stuff, and then you're just pretty clear, like I'm going to protect this person and their house and their family and their livestock and etc. And then you like list some people. And then you like in the name of, and then you just kind of like string together some magic names. And truthfully, some of them, when I read them, some of them are like baffling to me why they would have this particular assortment of names. Like some of them, it makes perfect, like I understand, I'm like, okay, this is a bowl to like protect against miscarriage and it's got like El Shaddai on it. Makes perfect sense. Like I understand, or it's like binding against Lilith to ensure a pregnancy. That makes perfect sense. But sometimes it'll be protecting a pregnancy and it'll be like Hephaestus and Uncle Joe or something. Like it's just like something, like, I don't know where they, but I'm sure that made sense. You know what I mean? I'm sure there was a reason that they picked them. Like I don't actually think they just took their big book of magic names and opened to a random page and pulled some stuff out, but it does sometimes seem that way to me. Like, so it's a really big, these bowls were made like, over a relatively wide geographic area for hundreds of years in a very multicultural environment. So they're not even all shaped like bowls, right? Like some of them are like wine glass, what we would think of as like a wine glass shape. It's a very sort of broad category. You know what I mean? So there's basically that kind that are sort of positive. I'm going to provide protection. And there's another kind which are basically like a spirit banishing or spirit trap, where it will like name kinds of demons. So the most common kind of demon they protect against is Liliths, Lily 2, Liliat, right? Which is at this time not a specific named creature, but a category of demon, Liliths. And then there's other kinds. Ashtarts, which I think would be a cool name for a punk band, like Lilith and the Ashtarts.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So that's like, that's similar like Ashtoreth, but instead of thinking as a proper name, it is a category of things. And something I think is cool that like I learned from these, but is actually quite common sort of in that region and time period, is that like a banishing is written as a divorce decree. Like if you look at like I divorce Lilith, take your get, and a get is like it's a divorce decree, but it's also the like lump sum alimony payment, I guess. It's like a payment that the get is the actual contract, but in this context, in this period, they are also saying like, I'm going to give you this amount of money and just get the fuck out of my house, woman, right? Like that's how it goes, right? Like we're done. And it's the same with the demon. Like they're written, like if you compare them to actual divorce decrees from the time, they're like word for word the same. They're just divorcing the demon instead of divorcing their spouse. And I think that's a really cool, it's a cool formula. Like it's not a way I necessarily would have thought about doing an exorcism.
Neither would I have, but it makes sense. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and Judaism, because of the way in Judaism, marriage is really understood contractually, right? So like, it's not just that you say vows, but there is like a specific written contract called a ketuvah, which in a modern context is basically a prenup. Like it outlines, I have a Jewish religious scholar sitting opposite me on the desk, and she's like looking at me like, that's not exactly true. Like, I understand that is a gross oversimplification. Like it is a contract that, no, I mean, you're right. So this is my friend Anna. She's a Harvard educated religious scholar about Judaism. She studies dibooks and like cross-cultural spirit possession. You guys should have her on sometime. Actually, she's really cool. Anyway, she's looking at me.
Hook that up. Hook us up.
Yeah, I'll hook you guys up. That is a gross oversimplification, but like the point is the ketuvah, it outlines like the rules for how the marriage will work, but it also explicitly talks about like what happens in a divorce. And they're largely formulaic. There's like a way you do them. And then in a modern context, people get them like fancy calligraphy. Like it's also like a marriage amulet sort of. Anyway, but because, and then similarly, like divorce is a very like, there's like a piece of paper you need with a specific like ritual formula on it to make a divorce be true, right? And like the idea of using that same kind of contractual law with spirits, I just think it makes me think a lot about like, in addition to writing a banishing as a divorce decree, like what would it be like to write like a ketuvah as a kind of like magical pact, right? Like when you enter into compact with a spirit, like thinking about that as a marriage is, I don't know, an interesting way to think about it for me.
Well, it is. And I mean, it can be, a somewhat binding contract if it's,
exactly.
If it's somebody that you have worked with for a time, or, perhaps it's, like a regional thing, like you said, if you've got, the Lily Twos or the Ashtoreths or whatever that are of the area, you would be kind of almost like a subletter of their area, right? If you want to think of it like a renter of the land, so to speak, right? So, I'm going to divorce myself from the patron of this land, or, whatever.
Yeah.
That's how I would see that anyway.
Exactly. And same, like that made me think about expanding it out, not just from there to like other kinds of contracts, right? Like leases. And it's just an interesting, so often when we talk about contract magic, it's in like a really weird, dark, like kind of Faustian way. But like, when I do business, like when I write a contract, I'm trying to get everybody exactly what they want. Like I'm not trying to cheat anybody when I write a contract, right?
Yeah.
And so like similarly, like when I write contracts with spirits, right? I'm actually trying to give everybody what they want in that situation. Yeah. Anyway, so that's like for whatever reason, I'm super into those this week. I don't know why.
This
I
week.
do know why.
love
I mean,
that.
it started off because Michael's had these clay saucers on sale. Like that's actually why I suddenly am into this, because I found like I was walking around the craft store and I was like, oh, these clay saucers are 79 cents. I'm just gonna buy a bunch of these. I bet these make cool demon bowls. And they do. And so that's why they're like, I often find truthfully that like the particular kind of magic I want to make this week is often about like what cool new craft supplies I got. You know what I mean? Like when the wormwood is fresh, that's what I'm like excited about, making wormwood potions or like whatever I just happen to have that's new that week is inspiring.
I think we all find that.
I think so, yeah.
Zariel did that today because we had a client that needed a different project, and then what she needed, then he turned into this other great idea that will be coming up soon. It's like, so whatever comes to our world at that time, it's like, whoa, this will be way better if we do it into whatever.
Yeah, right. I think sometimes like, you know, there are techniques that are particularly well suited for like certain kinds of magical goals. But I also think broadly, like most magical techniques can be used for like most goals.
Yeah.
If you like know what you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
well,
and
and just like flexibility with your materials is a big thing too, right? Like and we've learned this hugely with the pandemic, right? Because, you know, if I've been making, you know, let's say an altar tile out of slate for the last, you know, 3 years, and then all of a sudden now I can't get slate out of Hong Kong for 2 years. Well, I'm obviously going to use the natural stones around me, or, you know, whatever I can find, right?
Right. Well, I'm a big believer that like I'd always rather use like just natural things. I prefer to make my magic out of things that I like picked up out of the dirt.
Yeah.
And whatever's on sale at the craft store, basically.
That's awesome.
Or the grocery store. I mean, I don't really like to make the same thing over and over is really what it is. So like, I'm really into these Babylonian eagles, but in a month, I'm going to be like, oh, I never want to make another bowl.
Yeah,
right. Like so I'm going to make a bunch of them. And then next month, I'm sure I'll have some new obsession, which it'll be June. So it'll probably be a plant-based one. Like things in the garden.
We will check in and see what came up in June.
Right. Please.
I'm totally feeling that plant-based pull. It's finally up here in Canada. We're finally seeing no snow, and like the trees are starting to bud. So I'm all itchy to go out and do some wild crafting and stock up.
We had snow the last week in April here in Pittsburgh, which is maybe not unprecedented, but is unusually late here. So I too am excited to finally like get into the garden.
Yeah, we don't write anything into our schedules until after May long weekend up here, because we pretty much are guaranteed to be covered in snow pretty much until then. So
sensible. Yeah.
Pretty excited to be able to get out and actually do magic outside. You know,
right?
When you can go out and the air doesn't hurt your face when you're doing your sorcery.
Although I don't know, I feel like for me, I don't like the heat. So I really only have like 2 more weeks and then it'll just hurt on the other way. Like if I have to pick between like, you know, 10 degrees and 90 degrees, I would definitely take the 10 degrees.
All right. You got to come hang out with us up here.
Yes, please.
We can accommodate that.
All right. Well, you tell me when I can move in and I'll come.
I seriously still have snow piles in my yard.
Oh
Seriously.
my gosh.
Yeah.
That's exciting, but I'm sure it wouldn't be.
No.
I'm sure I'd be super sick of it. But yeah, broadly, I'd rather be too cold than too hot. Like my blubber is too warm.
So now you got me thinking on those bowls. So you said they're empowered with just the words are empowered, but you see them with lots of different deities and stuff. So are you empowering them through spoken word as you're writing them? Like, is it like a Vocus Magicae type thing, or are you consecrating it to each of the deities or gods that you are writing into it? Like, how does the actual like kind of tech work for making that into a spirit trap?
So here's the thing, we can't say what they did in antiquity, right? Because we don't have any like instructions for how to make these. We just have the finished product.
Yeah.
So what I do is first I consecrate the pens. Like I have pens that I only use for magic. right?
Yeah.
And then I sort of wake up the bowl, right? So here, right? I'm gonna take an empty bowl. I'm just gonna kind of like wake it up a little, you know what I mean? Which is partly about like, well, partly I will say they often are covered in clay dust. So partly there's a very practical where I'm like wiping the dust off because otherwise it clogs up your pen, right? But I'm also just sort of like, for me, the essence of almost any kind of like, I just call it awakening of like materia, is that like, this is an object and this is a person, right? Like that's what I'm doing when I awaken something,
Sure.
right? And similarly with like plant materia, it's sort of dead and I'm kind of like reminding it that it's actually a living being, it's a person, right? You got to like wake it back up, right? So there's like a physical that. And then I almost always like compose them on paper first, like figure out what I'm going to write before I actually write it, because although now that I've made like 30 of them this week, I've started to just like kind of extemporize, like I kind of get the hang of it. But especially when I'm making them for clients with like unfamiliar name, because, okay, I know this sounds ridiculous, but like, see how this, like the text actually just fit and I didn't have a big gap in the middle. And I also didn't have to smush everything in at the end. It's surprisingly hard to get them to place out. So I encourage you when you're writing them, when you're composing them, to like kind of write them one sentence at a time. So like you could remove a sentence and it will still work. And then kind of keep an eye on how much space you have to make sure, right? So I write them and I do like speak them out loud while I write them. And like, then when I put in the holy names, I do like, I'm moving my hands around as if that conveys some meaning. You know, I do like vibrate that name, I guess is how we say it. Like I do empower the name as I write it.
Yeah,
and then
sure.
and then at the end, I go back and seal them, which for me is mostly, I don't know, see how this has like this red lip on it?
Yeah.
That's really the last phase that I do with like a pen, is I just take usually red or gold and I just like kind of put a hard boundary around it, right? And then at that point, like they're physically done being crafted, and then I consecrate. So the first thing I do is like cast a circle around the edge, and then I kind of put like a, you know, they're written in a spiral. So I just kind of like awaken up that, like, I kind of want it to be like a vortex that sucks things in, I guess is
Absolutely.
what I'm saying. And then when I'm making them for me, I put like, if I was making one for my house, I'd put like a tiny drop of my own blood in the middle as like bait, basically, right? And then I feed them oils, which is one of the reasons I like these oil pens. I tried a number of pens before I found one that didn't bleed when you coat it in oil. So these will actually, like, you can pour oil in this and it doesn't mess it up, right?
Yeah, so pretty standard, just awaken the materia, feed the materia, you know, treat it like the spirit that it is.
Right. And so when I make them for other people, what I tell them is that like they are pre-awakened. So all you have to do, like, you don't have to do anything. You can just like put it by your door and it's done. But then like, it's better to just sort of like, you know, remember that it's a person. And so like introduce yourself and welcome it to your house and like explain what its job is, and then walk it around the perimeter of your house and like show it, like introduce it to the people it's going to protect. And then I really think this is the most important part of like keeping it awake, is like when you leave the house, like give it a name. Like people have names, right? So in addition to the holy names on the bowl itself has a name, which I think of as like secret, in the sense that I don't write them on the bowl. Like I know the bull's name and people who live in the house know the bull's name. I'm sure they don't. I mean, I told them, but truthfully, I'm pretty confident my roommates do not remember those sort of things. Like, but like every time I leave the house, I'm like, thank you, name, for looking over my house while I'm going to be away. And then when I come back, I'm like, hello, name. Thanks. Like, good job keeping the house from burning down. And like, I treat it like a person, and I like to sort of just feed them some oil maybe once a month, now and again. Like, I don't think this is one of those like every full moon, like just, you know, from time to time, to just kind of like keep it awake, which I think broadly is the case with almost any kind of amulet I make, right? There's some amount of like formal consecration that for me, I generally do during the making process. but not always. So like Solomon and Pentacles, sometimes I just laser cut them and then like do that, but it's really the same as if I was doing them by hand. I'm still going to go over every line with like, actually what I'd use is a Q-tip dipped in olive oil. And I like trace out all the lines because I think that's just the easiest. I feel like the easiest way to awaken a name is by drawing and writing the name. You know what I mean? Like those activities go together. So I generally like consecrate while I'm going. And then the next thing I'm doing is just sealing. Right. And I really think treating them like people and not like objects is kind of the like magic secret sauce to magical item making, which I don't think is like controversial, right? I think actually everybody thinks that.
Yeah, I would totally agree with it. I mean, any of my wards, any of my amulets, like, you know, that you, if you're out and you're in the backyard and you're by your apple tree and you have your, you know, image of yourself there and you're like, hey, me, how are you doing? Pulling all those hexes over to you, right? Or whatever, right?
Exactly.
Here's a little bit of whiskey.
I work magic like a 4-year-old, basically. Like I would also say hello to Mr. Apple Tree, like, you know, which I think is actually how everybody does it.
Yeah. Well, anybody that's been,
I mean, maybe not. I'm sure there are people who don't.
It's hard to imagine being such an animist though, you know, where like the stone that I pick up when I'm out walking has a spirit that I talk to, you know, like it's
right.
But the tree you're working with has a spirit.
Exactly,
you get a new wand and you start working with it and all of a sudden it starts talking to you and you're like, oh, hey,
exactly. I really, and I also think of it as kind of like just a general lifestyle. Like if something is a person and you treat it like an object, that's like not an okay way to treat people. But if something is an object and you treat it like a person, doesn't seem like there's a lot of avenues for harm there. You know what I mean? Like there is an amount of like Pascal wager, like is this weird little plastic piece of trash actually a person? Seems better to treat it as such. And by doing so, I maybe use less random pieces of plastic trash in my life. You know, like I think there's just like an ethical component to animism as well as like a magical and just like anyway. So I don't mean to get all preachy about it. My nun habit is in the wash, so I'm not allowed to preach today. Them's the rule.
I like how you intertwine it all, those Sarah. You make it all so magical, really.
I just be me. Like to me, it's just me being me. Yeah. Like there's not, I can't like I don't have like little silos at times in my life where like the nature of my life did not permit things to be so integrated. Like when there was like a Sarah who was at work and a Sarah who was at grad school and a Sarah who was a witch, I was very bad at that. They all just bled together. And so now I've just fully given up on, there's just the one me doing me things all the time.
Much easier, really, right? And definitely much more heartfelt and very
that's
real,
what I
really.
think. I think so as well, but I've been talking to other people. I understand that can feel very vulnerable. Like I am very like open. Like all my vulnerable spots are like fully on display all the time. So like I can understand reasons why people might not want to do that. But I'm just like, I'm actually legitimately bad at not being myself. Like there's just a limit to how long I can keep my mouth shut and like pretend to be normal. I'm like not good at it.
Yeah,
it's really
I normal.
Like I got a lot of weirdo friends who appear to just be able to like pass for normal indefinitely, but I can't really. Oh geez, because you have the like green screen background, the bottle is just like invisible.
I do my own form of magic over here.
Yeah, I'm not good at passing for normal. Like I feel like that like normal like picket fences suburbs thing was like not an option that was ever available to me.
Yeah.
Like it's not like I was like, oh no, I'm too cool for that. I'm like not cool enough for that, I guess.
Yeah, you have a hard time sitting down and talking about the weather and what happened on the football game.
I mean, I could talk about the weather so long. Weather is super cool, but it turns out that people who talk about the weather don't actually want to talk about weather.
Yeah.
Because I have opinions about weather.
Yeah,
You know,
we were just talking to somebody about weather magic the other day. So it was, we have lots of opinions there too.
right.
But when you're talking to normal people about the weather, they don't want to hear about you summoning the 4 Greek winds and how that turned out for you.
Right? My mother was a weather worker, and she said that like over the course of her lifetime, like weather magic got much less predictable. Something that she blamed on like global climate destabilization.
Interesting.
So I don't do a lot of weather magic, partly for that reason. I do think that like maybe the weather's fucked up enough that we don't need to fuck it up more.
That's fair. Well, and then you have all of the human intervention now where we're causing rain and things like that.
Right. Well, and I mean, also where I live in Pittsburgh, like it's not that I never would, but I mean, I don't live a place where we have like weather emergencies, right? Like I don't have like, I mean, we have drought, like maybe the grass gets a little brown. We don't have like fire season kind of weather. And we get blizzards, but we don't get like 15 feet of snow kind of blizzards. We get hurricanes, but I mean, they're just like real bad thunderstorms. You know what I'm saying? Like in an emergency situation, I probably would do some weather magic, but I'm not going to do weather magic just because like I would like it to be a different weather than it is. Is my position on the matter, because I just feel like there is a big chance of like fucking it all up in a way that like weather is already broken. So
absolutely, I could agree with that. The only time I've ever actually participated in weather magic was during drought times, so I
definitely did some weather magic when I was a kid. Like I have definitely summoned storms just to get out of tests.
That's awesome.
Well, man, is it like now looking back as an adult, that's like maybe not the most ethical thing I've ever done. But I didn't like think through the consequences of it as a 13-year-old.
But that's for any of us that started doing things early.
Exactly.
Like I started when I was 11. I can guarantee you there's some spells that I would have done either completely differently or not done at all. Looking back on my past, right? So it's the maturity, it's the maturing thing.
Like, I mean, everybody does dumb shit when they're young, and I will say like, I don't know, having taught high school and like observed young people, my young and dumb was like maybe less dumb than some young people.
That's fair.
Like I don't feel like there's anything I did that I like am deeply ashamed of. Like I definitely never tried to hurt people. That's not true. But the people I hurt deserved it. Like genuinely deserved it. Like they were bad people who were hurting lots of other people. And I don't feel that morally conflicted about it. But in terms of like dumb, relatively recently, I'm teaching this course on Solomonic Pentacles. Yep. And in the Venus lesson, I was like going back through, I remembered like the first Solomonic Pentacle I had ever made. And I made it like in my like Book of Shadows when I was like 14. And I found that book and I was flipping through it. And on this Venus pentacle, I have a little sticker of the Helm of Awe, which for like people who are listening, if you don't know what that is, it's like a Norse bind rune. Yeah, that one right there, right? And it goes with a particular rune poem that like I don't remember off the top of my head, but it says something like, "I have never met my match. I alone am the fucking coolest." I mean, that's not exactly how it goes, but something like that, right? Yeah. And I put that sticker next to a pentacle designed to draw lovers. And I will neither confirm nor deny that, like, I'm too cool for everyone in the world is like a very accurate summary of my love life. Not the best. I mean, now I'm a nun. Like I'm kind of leaning into that one. But I looked at it and I thought about unweaving that page. And then I decided that if I had to choose between a partner and a helm of awe, I'd rather have a helm of awe. But like, I don't know why I did that. I think it was because they were both round and looked cool. Like, I actually think that was my reasoning. Like, oh, well, this is circular and looks cool. And this is also circular and looks cool. So I'm going to put them together.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and then the other thing that the Egishilnir can do that a lot of people don't realize is, I believe it's in one of the Galder box, it actually says that it will make you irresistible in battle. And so it can actually cause people to like have issue with you and want to start confrontation with you just because you're there and you can. And like, I got this tattoo when I was really young, right? Because I have Norse heritage. I was doing a lot of Norse magic at the time, working through the Galdrabok, trying out different things to see what worked for me. And you know, I realized that when I had it, I was really, really protected. But then I realized, you know, like a year after that, since I got it, all of a sudden, you know, I'm getting into confrontations at work. And I'm like, why is it that no matter where I am, somebody has to like think that I'm better than them, or I'm portraying myself as better than them? And, you know, so now that's one that I might have not maybe done quite the same way that I did.
Yeah, same. And again, that's an accurate description of my love life, is like, maybe I'm just picking a fight all the time for no reason. I didn't think I was doing that. But yeah, I think, and that's what I mean. Like, I think we all make those kind of mistakes when we're beginning, especially for those of us who were like young when we started. And like, I mean, I don't know, you got a cool mom, so maybe this wasn't you. I didn't like have, like, I was just like piecing together little pieces. I was like, well, I learned this from a fairy tale, and I learned this from a ghost. And this thing I saw in a movie once, and it seemed cool. You know, like, I didn't have like a coherent understanding of anything. I was just like, that seems cool. I'm going to do that. But also like, and then a tree told me to do this. So I did it, which I got to say, trees have rarely led me astray. Like ghosts, those can't always be trusted. But, oh no, there is this one tree in the park who's just a dick. Like, my friend's 4-year-old was like, oh no, that tree is mean. And I went over and I was like, she's right. Like, that tree, I don't know why. Yeah. Except that it's like, it's right at the entrance of the park. So it's probably the one that like everybody leaves their trash under, and like every dog pees on it. And
yeah, I'd be angry too.
Mean if I lived there too. But yeah, it's like a grumpy old man tree.
For sure. Yeah, that's and for people that are listening, you know, maybe go and start making friends with your trees in your yard, because you know that, 100%. That's a really, really, really good relationship to have.
Especially if you can find grown-up trees. Like, a weird fact about our culture is that like actually most trees in our world get killed before they actually reach tree maturity. So like, particularly if you can find big old trees. But at least where I live in the city, those are like not that easy to find.
They really aren't. And they're always ripped down and then replanted as soon as they start to get to that maturity. It's
exactly. So if you can find big,
come out to my forest.
Yes, please.
I got some good old guys out there.
I mean, I have big ones, but not like walking distance from, I mean, I live in the city, so yeah. I have like 2 full-grown trees and then a yard full of trees that are 7 years old because I planted them 7 years ago.
I have the 20-acre woods. It's pretty delightful.
Exciting. All right. I mean, I think we've established on this call
that you're in
with you. Like, I think it's decided.
Yeah. Sure.
Like, I'll pack a bag.
We'll take you and we'll show you the awesome Canadian Rockies and all of the fun spirits you can interact with out there.
I'm not going to lie. This week is looking like a good time to move to Canada. So.
Yeah, what the hell is going on down there? It's like you guys just went back to the 1820s.
Okay, we weren't going to go there on this call, remember?
I mean, yeah, I don't want to get too political, but I will say, like, I wish I could say that this was a surprise, but I mean, I feel like I've been telling everybody that this is the direction we're going for like 20 years. And now people are like, oh my God, I can't believe they did that. And I'm like, well, they've been saying this whole time that was their goal. So I don't know why you like didn't believe them. I don't.
Because you can't believe they actually would. Like, it's.
Oh, I mean. Yeah. I don't. Yeah, no, it is not good.
We won't go there.
Yeah.
Anyway, point is,
We'll leave that.
moving to Canada seems pretty promising.
Well, this week.
Yeah,
we can't guarantee much.
Yeah, we can't guarantee what's going to
happen.
Also, I did hear about those piles of snow in May, which that
Right.
doesn't sound 100% great.
But when you go out and you talk to the snow, you just say, oh yeah, you're still here because we have no bugs, we have no rats, we have no snakes. And you sing a little ditty about it. And it's okay.
Except for snakes. I do like snakes.
I like snakes too, but
don't
I'll tell you, I went to Hawaii, what was it, 3 years ago, and I was really thankful for our climate here. I ran into one of those cane spiders and it was like that fucking big. I absolutely lost my shit. You know, up here we get these little, like, I don't even know if you know what a loonie is, but it's like a very small coin, right? That's a big spider for us here. So when I was in Hawaii, I was like crying. It was so bad.
Oh yeah, same. We don't have, I guess every once in a while we have wolf spiders that are maybe like that big. But no, we don't have like, yeah, I mean, we don't have giant, terrible monster spiders here either.
Yeah, like I won't even work with spider totem. Not even looking at that.
Yeah, I don't have any objection to spiders particularly. Like they're rats on the other hand kind of freak me out. I'm like not. That's for whatever reason. Like I'm not saying I hate them or I want to exterminate them or anything, but like maybe they stay in their place and I'll stay in my place. And if I never have to think about the fact that they exist, that would be fine by me.
Yeah,
like,
they don't need to live near us. It's good.
Yeah, I'm not into rodents. They kind of creep. I mean, not in a like I'm gonna scream and lose my shit if I see one.
Oh, I will.
I mean, but they're not my favorite. Like I don't want one like crawling on me.
Although I do have a ferret that lives in my house now. My daughter brought home a ferret, so that was a big learning curve for Mama.
Yeah, I mean, I have lived with a ferret at one point. I had a roommate with one.
It's a whole nother gig.
It was not my top choice of pet.
I look forward to them moving out. Yeah.
Well, maybe they'll grow on you.
Well, it's been a year. I've done well, but
so maybe not.
I won't miss him. I won't miss him when he moves out. I will pack him a little bag of goodies and say, see you, baby.
See, and we're supposed to love these animals as witches.
I do love him, but I will love him better when he lives in his own home.
Snakes I love. I have a pet snake. Like we have snakes outside. I do genuinely love snakes. I got no beef with like spiders or bats. But rats,
no bats. Flying rodents. There's nothing worse on the planet.
They're not my favorite. But rats are really where the like I'm gonna tell okay, so my dad worked in a rental office when I was a kid. And that meant that like sometimes I sat in a rental office as a kid. And there was this one tenant named Kang who was a Cambodian refugee. And he would tell stories about like having lived in that Cambodian refugee camp. And I'm going to remind you that I'm like 6 years old when I heard him tell a story about how the rats were so big, somebody had to stay up at night because otherwise they would eat the children's toes off.
No.
And that's a story I heard when I was 6. And I'm pretty sure that's why I'm like freaked out about rats. Like every,
that's so
give me
bad.
the willies. Like I can't, oof.
Yeah, so bad.
I can understand that.
That really got to me as a kid. Really, a lot of those stories about Cambodia. Like, I'm glad I was not in a Cambodian refugee camp, I guess is what I will say.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah, like, oof, I heard a lot of rough stories about it as a kid.
Yeah. So what else do you got going on the burner there? You've always got something interesting going on.
My class on Samhain Pentacles is nearing its conclusion. I have an introduction to witchcraft class, which we just did a lesson on sigils, and we're going to start planetary magic in a couple weeks. What else do I have? Oh, June. I'm going to look at my calendar because I don't know what day. June 12th, Sunday, June 12th. I am leading ritual at the Hills and River Summerfest, which is near State College, Pennsylvania. So that's like people can look it up, Hills and Rivers. It's my first time leading a big public ritual since COVID. So I'm really happy and excited about it because things keep getting canceled and I do miss those big festivals.
And we're all tired of it and we just want to get back to doing the fun.
It's so fun that it's all starting again though. It's
I think, I don't think we're going to have quite a real festival season this summer, but like things are starting. And I think by next year we'll be back to.
What do you find? How do you find your energy level now that you are heading out into doing these things since we haven't done them in a good 2 years? How are your energy levels when you do these things? And how do you protect that and keep it up?
I see, for me, I dread them as I'm coming up. I'm like, oh my God, there's going to be other people. But then once I'm actually there and doing it, I'm like super high on extroversion. And then I come home and just crash. Right. Because I'm like not used to, I'm like jonesing for humans so much that I'm like super high energy while I'm actually around people.
Yeah.
But also I feel like I've just like forgotten how to person in public.
Right. I think we all have.
I think so. But that's what I'm saying. Everybody else has too. So it's working.
Totally.
It's kind of cool. Actually. Everybody's really like we've all forgotten how to be like pretentious and affected and fake. And everybody, like we all forgot how to do that. And now we just be authentic in public, which is kind of cool.
It seems better,
really
but it does feel like peopling is hard. Going back and peopling. I find
it's weird. I like forgot how it works. Sorry for the train noise. I live near train tracks.
That's all good. Yeah, it's crazy. Like I took the kids to go do Comic-Con the other week and it was so packed with people. And by the end of it, we were all like, oh my God, all my energy is gone. What the heck just happened? We are not used to this. I'm touched out.
One of the things I like about festivals is, especially when you're presenting at a festival, you like get that energy back, right? Where like when you teach on Zoom, you're just kind of like screaming into the void. And like, sure, some people ask some questions, but it's not like, there's no like energy reciprocation. Like I still have to put out all that energy, but really nothing comes back.
Right. I agree.
Right? Yeah. When I'm presenting at a festival, I'm like, oh my God, applause. I forgot how cool that is.
Yeah.
They like me. Like, I know I'm supposed to be over it and not care, but like, I do enjoy that like infusion of extrovert energy from like, effectively performing. Right. Yeah. And I'm happy to get back to it. Yeah, so that's my first one. And then I think I have something, I don't know, if people look at my website, they can see the whole calendar. I know I should know this, but I don't. But that's the next one.
You have people and you have a calendar. It's all good.
Yeah, right? Like,
that's what it's for. That's why we have websites.
Exactly. And these are all still, I don't have any big, I think the next like big in-person thing I have is the Northwest Tarot Symposium in October. Because, in addition to doing this Witch for Hire stuff, I also co-own a digital tarot publishing company. So we're doing that.
Oh yeah, like you bought the Fool's Dog, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's good. Great company.
Yeah, things are going well there. It's starting to like, the transition itself was a little bumpy. Because transitions are always bumpy. Right. Yeah. But it seems like it's sort of like smoothing out. And so hopefully I'm probably not supposed to say this yet, but fingers crossed, we should start putting out new decks pretty soon.
Oh, very cool. Fun. That's awesome.
I'm excited about it.
Yeah. See, there's always so many things to Sara Mastros.
Well, I just get bored if I do the same thing all the time. So I always want to have a lot of balls in here because then I can procrastinate by doing something else.
That's fair.
You know what I mean? Like if I'm stuck on one project, I can just move to a different one.
I just have like 100 ongoing projects at all times because my ADHD kicks in and I forget that I have them on the go.
Yeah, exactly. And I both have like maybe like real projects, that is to say projects I'm going to finish, but I also have like tons of like things I'm not going, like, I know, like, I also have probably 9 novels outlined that between you and me, I'm never going to write, because outlining was like the only fun part.
That's fair.
No,
Or maybe in your 80s, you'll go back to them or something.
maybe, I mean, I don't know. Honestly, I feel like for most projects, like the beginning part is really fun. And then there's this part at the end where you have to like do all the boring parts. So like in writing, like the editing and like,
Yeah.
I'm not that into those parts. Like truthfully, I kind of have to get paid to do that. Like outlining a book, I do that for free. That's really fun. Even like teaching, like I'll happily do that. But if I gotta like actually make like slides that aren't riddled with typos or like edit a book, I gotta get paid for that. Like that's not gonna happen.
That's fair. Totally fair.
I like that.
I mean, I don't know about you guys. I still find it like insane that people pay me. It's so weird to me that I'm a professional witch. Like, that's not a real job. I mean, obviously it is a real job. We were just talking about how historically it's clearly a real job, but like my guidance counselor did not believe that was a real job. And it turns out it's like a real job. Like,
we're doing it, so it's got to be real, right?
I know a lot of people who are doing it, actually.
Yeah, and I know a lot of them that are successful. So you know, like,
I'm definitely keeping the lights on, just doing this. I mean, I don't have like a secret. It's not like I'm also a bank teller or something. Like I don't have a real. I'm deeply committed to my no real job lifestyle. Truthfully, I'm pretty solid in it. Like I would not want to.
Why wouldn't you be? You get to live the dream, right?
Yeah, I think you're living the dream, Sarah. I think you are.
I have few kids. I mean, I feel that way too. Like and it's strange. Like it's still, I keep thinking like, when is the other shoe gonna drop? But no, like I have very few complaints, honestly. Like almost everything in my life is going great. Like I really do. I know like hashtag blessed, but I really feel that way. Like I'm happy with how my life is. There are things that could be better in my life, but the truth is like, I don't dislike them enough to do anything. Like they could actually be better if I were to do something about them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, would I like to date more? Not enough to like brush my hair and leave my house. So, like, you know what I mean?
Because that might be a thing.
If Mr. Right showed up in my living room, I'd like possibly be open to that, but not really. Like, actually, I say that, but that has occurred maybe twice in the last 3 years where Mr. Right showed up in my living room, and I was like, no, I'm gonna stay being a nun. This is great. So for everybody out there, witch nun is totally a viable lifestyle choice, and it's amazing. Highly recommended. Highly recommended. Not for young people though. Young people should go have some adventures first, and then they can be an old lady nun like me.
And just a testament to your magical magnetism. You know, like I always joke with people that want to hire me for like a love spell or an attraction spell or something. And I'm like, well, you know, you're going to have to get up off your couch and get out of your house and, you know, like maybe go out and do things. And so you just broke my rule. You completely broke my rule.
I mean, I do go out and I mean, I go to these giant festivals where I present in front of hundreds of people at a time. But also when I first moved into this house, I put 4 couches in a circle. And people were like, that's weird. But now basically every social event in my social circle happens in my living room, which I feel like is every adult's dream. Like I go to every party in my pajamas because they're all at my house.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm a total hobbit. Like I never want to go anywhere. Especially I just got back from a trip to Seattle, which was not a good trip. I mean, not the visiting, but the actual, like, every flight I went on was like turbulent. I lost my ID.
Oh, no.
Well, here's a fun fact. It's surprisingly easy to get on an airplane with no driver's, with no ID. actually. Like I should have realized that like I'm not the only person who's ever lost my purse while out of town.
Yikes, that's scary though. Hey,
It was, but I called and they were like, oh no, it happens all the time. So if for anybody listening, like what happens is you just have to show up early and you ask for a TSA manager and they're just like, okay, stand here and wait. But honestly, the amount of time I waited was less time than it would have taken me to get through that security line. And then they just like ask you some questions. They're like, what's your birthday? What's your social security number? What's your previous address? What's your mom's birthday? Which apparently a lot of people don't know your mom's birthday. So heads up, people know your mom's
learn your mom's birthday.
Right.
Hey, you.
And that was basically that was basically it. Like then they just put me on an airplane. Very easy. Nice. What was hard was checking a bag without a credit card. Like they would not take cash.
Oh, interesting.
I signed up for the airline credit card and they took that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I didn't anticipate them not taking cash.
Yeah.
Sorry, I hate to blow my nose on camera.
Oh, it's all good. All good. Yeah, there seems to be a thing about Seattle. Every time I go through Seattle, there's a problem there.
You know, I've never had, I go out there a lot because my godmother lives there from whom I bought this tarot company. So I'm actually back and forth a lot. I mean, I guess she lives in Olympia, but you know, normally I fly Alaska Airlines and like shout out, actually Alaska Airlines has always done right by me, but their pilots are picketing and like, I'm not going to cross a picket line. So I ended up with American and I encourage everyone to never take an American Airlines flight. Every single interaction I had with them was terrible. Also, look, all airplane seats are too small for my fat ass, but these seats, like normal adults did not fit in them. They were insanely small. And it was like me and this big dude and another like regular size. It was a very uncomfortable flight. Also on my flight there, they seated me next to a literal Nazi, like straight up swastika tattoo Nazi.
Wonderful.
Anyway, sorry to complain.
That must have got colorful.
It was, I just like, you know, in my brain, I understood like, he doesn't know that you're a Jewish freak witch. Just be quiet and sit there, Sarah, like keep your headphones on. And like, but it just made me, it was just like super anxious about it. And also, as you might expect, he was also a jerk. Unsurprisingly. Like, for example, egregious manspreading. Like he took up a seat and a half because he's a jerk. But of course he's a jerk because he has a swastika tattoo and that's just like a label that says like, by the way, I'm an asshole. Yeah. Anyway, sorry to complain. So as of right now, I never want to leave my house again. Like this trip, I don't know if I like offended the airline gods, but really everything about flying this time was just awful. I mean, objectively, nothing happened. It's not like my flight went down or anything. It was mildly uncomfortable and inconvenient, and I'm like such a prima donna that somehow it being uncomfortable and inconvenient, I'm like, oh, fuck the whole world. The gods hate me. But like, obviously, as I mentioned, #blessed, it was inconvenient and uncomfortable. As awesome. Airline travel is wont to be. But I got to look out a window and be above the clouds, which like, super I know cool. I'm supposed to be jaded to, but I never am. Every time I'm in an airplane, I'm like, holy shit, I'm flying in the sky. And it's every time, it's like mind-blowing for me.
See,
like,
I love that you do take everything like a 4-year-old. It's just so super cool.
I'm just very immature. I find it astonishing that other people look out a window and are like, oh yeah, those are clouds down there. Whatever, I'm gonna go back to my magazine. I understand some people fly all the time, but still, you're like above the clouds.
Yeah.
Oh, yo, here's a pro tip. One time on an airplane, I was like, I'm going to travel out of body and like bounce on the clouds. Oh, yo, that was a bad idea because when I came back, my body was like very far away from when I left it. I was like, oh, I mean, it was fine. I'm like a grown-up witch. I mean, I found it, but there was a moment where I was like, oh, fuck, where'd my body go? Because it went very far. Like airplanes, you don't always appreciate how fast you're going until you're out of your body for 10 minutes and you come back and you're like 300 miles away. And I'm like, oh, I was in Pittsburgh an hour ago and now I'm in Chicago.
Yeah.
So I guess pro tip, maybe stay in your body on an airplane.
Yeah.
That's a great tip for the listeners. They're going to love that one.
It was cool jumping on the clouds though. It was cool.
Very
But yeah,
fun.
I'm really just like a chibi caricature of a human being, basically.
I think that's why we love you so, Sarah.
Thank you. I really do find most things like delightful.
That's a great attitude to have, and it makes everything so much better. I mean, why would you want to be all grumpy all the time if you can just enjoy everything?
I mean, I know I'm supposed to be all like Buddhist, like life is suffering, but and I understand that for many people that is true. Like I do try and remain like very cognizant of my extreme like luckiness, and I do try and like leverage my luck for other people. But the world seems great to me, and if I get to choose, I would like to sign up to just do this again. This has been good.
Yeah.
Like I could do this again many more lifetimes. It's great. I like it here.
Yeah.
I wish my hip hurt less. But again, not enough to do anything about it. Like if I, for example, actually went swimming 4 times a week instead of the 1 time a week I manage, probably it would be better. So.
Yep, for sure.
Right. We all have the choices every day, right?
I think so. But again, I try to remain cognizant that like other people's choices are constrained by a number of factors that I feel like a sad fact about the world is that the gods play favorites. And is like clear to me that I am well favored in a way that I have done nothing to deserve. Like, I don't know why, but actually clearly the gods just like me and like shower blessings upon me that I do not in any way deserve. And I definitely see people out there like I see people out there who are like clearly not well favored and like it is not their fault, but like terrible things happen to them. You know, their parents were monsters and it just went downhill from there. You know what I mean? So I try and be cognizant, and you know that thing where they say like, God will never test you harder than you can bear. I guess God knows that I'm like very weak. Because like, things mostly just don't happen to me. So probably my next life will be terrible. Like I'll probably have to make up for, I'm probably using up like many lifetimes worth of good luck now. But you know, I'll cross that bridge when I get there.
That's right.
For sure. You know, maybe you'll just come back as a cat and then, you know, you get to live life all happy and carefree again.
You know, weirdly, I've been told by many spirits that this is my first human lifetime, which I don't like think would be true. I don't know. I have no like conception of I can barely like understand the world that I'm actually looking at. So like I don't have real strong opinions on like what happens after I'm dead. But I assume it's so different from this that like I couldn't understand it while I'm person shaped anyway. Like even communicating with trees is hard. So communicating with something that like just doesn't have a body at all, like I'm very cognizant that like I'm always projecting my own human shaped bias into conversations I have with non-human things.
Absolutely.
Right. And I assume the other way too. I assume when that tree talks to its tree friends, like it just thinks I'm like a weird tree who like it doesn't really understand why I'm being human-y, and it probably doesn't even notice. You know what I mean? I guess what I'm saying is it describes me in tree metaphor, just like I'm describing it in human metaphor, I assume. But I try hard to like not have opinions about like the ultimate reality of how the universe works, because
And I don't think any of us can really. It's so big and broad. I mean, all you have to do is have one really good acid trip in your life, and you know there's way more out there than you can understand, right?
right.
Like-
And I'm always, it does seem really comforting. Like I will say, like I didn't grow up like religious or whatever, but like there is an amount of like, it seems that there are people who are confident they know how the world works. And
Yeah,
that
for sure,
seems like it would probably be great. But it must not be, because those people all appear to be miserable. Like objectively, they appear to not be living good. You know what I mean? Like the people who are most like rigidly sure they understand everything appear to be miserable. So it must not be comforting, but it seems like it would be. Not having to make decisions for yourself, that seems good. I always like to do nothing. That's my favorite thing to do, is nothing.
If it's all in the plan, you're already good to go. All right. Well, it has been absolutely
gosh.
wonderful
It's so
talking
much
to you
later
again
than
here,
I
Sarah.
thought.
I just looked at the time and we're going like
Way
crazy
over.
here. We're doing awesome.
Fun to talk to.
So I noticed that you have a lot of new services on your website under your for purchase. So looks like people can pretty much get just about anything done by you now, which is super cool. So hopefully
It's true. I will say truthfully, like if you want to purchase something from me, the best thing to do is send me, like instead of picking off the list, really what happens is people ask me for something and I make up something custom for them. And then I just put it on the website for if somebody wants that. But it's always better just
That's
like if you just
cool.
email me, I'm happy to like have a conversation and work out something exactly for people. But I also try, you know, I've been making a lot of like lessons. So from my point of view, hashtag why I'm not a millionaire. Like I would much rather sell you a $20 like lesson on how to make bowls than I would to sell you like a $300 bowl. Now I know theoretically I should want to sell you a $300 bowl that takes me 2 hours and not a $20 lesson that took me like a month to write. But I just generally like, I would rather people make their own magic. So also anything
I love
do
that you just
hire
share
me.
that. You share your knowledge so others can just do. I love that.
I genuinely believe that information wants to be free. Like I know people say that in like a casual sense, but I really mean it in a like as part of my dedication to she of liminality and learning, I prefer people to know things. And you know what? If I won the lottery, I would happily teach for free. Like I keep my prices as low as I can and be able to not have a real job. Like if I didn't have to, like if I just had a pile of money, I wouldn't charge for the teaching at all. Although weirdly, I don't know if you guys have noticed this. I used to run classes for free. And so my classes are all free for people who live in my county, FYI. Like that's if you're in my community, you learn for free. People like far away pay. But it turns out that people who like when I made them free, nobody came.
Very true.
I've had the same issue.
I don't understand. But like I used to teach Introduction to Witchcraft for free, and like one person would show up. And now I teach Introduction to Witchcraft when it's local for like 10, 15 bucks. And I have like 30 people in the room.
Yeah, they need the commitment. It's
I
a thing.
guess I don't know how that works, but that's my experience.
We've run into that with
Absolutely.
so many things. Oh, let's just do a free one this week, and then nobody shows up.
Nobody comes
then-
up when they're
And you know, like every time that we try and do a promo for something, like here you go, here's a free class for you. You know, everybody else is paying this much. This is like a scholarship you can have. They're always the ones that either they don't show up at all, or they're the ones that you have troubles with because you know something goes wrong, right?
Remember I was saying my dad worked in a rental office? That meant we
Yeah.
had a lot of free furniture that people left in their apartments that we were trying to get rid of. And my dad said that if you put it on a curb with a sign that said free, no one would take it. But if you
Yeah.
put it on the curb with a sign that said $10, somebody would definitely steal it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And like that,
Yeah. The human mind.
our culture is so fucked up. It really is.
Absolutely.
Like, I don't,
It's so strange.
what has capitalism done to us? It's so like,
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm always turning everything into politics.
It's okay. Anybody just turning on the news right now can just see how fucked the world is. So there's just not.
That's why I don't.
That's why we have a rule where there's no news at work anymore.
Very reasonable. That's a good rule. I like that rule.
All right. This has been delightful,
We're
Sarah.
Yeah,
Once
it's always
again.
fun to talk to you guys. I'm happy to
Always
come
so
back and
fun.
talk like whenever.
I know. We'll have to say again.
Yeah, right. I
Totally.
very much enjoyed talking to you guys. It was awesome. So thank you for having
You're the
me.
best.
Yeah, well, right back at you.
And we will absolutely love to have you back. And for any of our listeners who are listening to this, please check out Sarah's classes. She's an amazing teacher. You will not regret it. She is a wealth of knowledge and is able to explain things in a very layperson way that almost anybody can get, which is one of the things that I super respect about Sarah. And follow her on Facebook if she'll let you, because she always shares awesome, cool tidbits there for free, which
I will always let you, but like if we don't have a lot of mutual friends, I might not hit accept. Just send me a message so I know you're like a person and not a wicked robot, and then I will accept you.
Perfect. And so yeah, this has been a great episode, and thank you all for tuning in.
Thank you for having me. Bye, everybody.